Hello everyone. In our last tutorial we have discussed about what is the coding protocol. Earlier we used to have JSON serialization, and after Swift4 has introduced this Codable protocol, which made our life easy. So it's easy to decode, encode the service responses using the Codable protocol. So JSON serialization is having some challenges, like if there are nested structures, typecasting, manual mapping, error handling, data transformations, maintainability. If there is a nested structure, even though it is this small, JSON serialization ends up with this many lines of code, and it's very hard to maintain it. So that we discussed, and the solution for it is Swift4 has introduced Codable protocol, which is a type alias for decodable and encodable, the combination. And we have taken some custom models, and we have done JSON decoding and encoding with the help of JSON decoder and JSON encoder native classes. So encoding is nothing but serialization, decoding is nothing but deserialization. And okay, so we were able to convert a sample JSON string into our custom Swift object, and our custom Swift object into a JSON string. So this we discussed, and in this tutorial let's discuss about what are coding keys, what are additional keys we can give, how the data transformations can be done using the Codable protocol. So these things let's discuss here. So first let's start with coding keys. So why we need coding keys? For example, let's say I have a JSON string. For example, this let's suppose this is the response from my service, where it is having a product in the form of JSON string. The product is having ID, name of the product, info of the product, and price of the product. But in my Swift custom model, I don't want these names. I want it like ID, name. Instead of info, I want to go with description. Instead of price, I want to go with the cost, to maintain the consistency with the models that I am using across my application. Let's say I want to do that. So in this case, what we need to do is, why? Because we are directly giving the JSON structure, and our custom model structure are different. We need to provide the coding keys. Coding keys is just we are saying it to the decoding and encoding process, saying, boss, you will get info, but this is description, take it as description. You will get price, you take it as cost. It's as simple as that. And this conforms to the coding key protocol and the string. Why? Because these are just key names. Okay, and these two are same. Even though we need to write it, but these two are different. So if I try to decode it, product dot self product data. Now let's see whether I am successfully able to do it or not. See, okay, I am able to. ID, name, description. I am getting the description is description as fruit. Instead of price, I am getting the cost. So my product object got prepared with the custom keys I want. So this is the reason we need to maintain the coding keys. Okay, why? Because coding keys, though we are not giving it what it is actually doing inside of decoding and encoding processes, it create coding keys and matches this with your JSON string. But this is like overriding it and saying that, boss, I need this. But if we don't mention it, you can see like Codable is easy to maintain. It gives the errors stuff saying that, boss, no value associated with the description and first it is complaining about the description. Okay, that means I don't say description in your payload. So what do you mean? That means I need to provide the description. Now description I fixed it. Now cost, if I say okay, I still need the cost, now again it will start complaining that cost is not available. I see only price here, but you are saying cost. So that's the reason we need to mention like it, and then you will not get any errors. You will get the product object as you wanted. So this is what internally actually used by the coders and decoding and encoding process. But here just we are overriding and telling it that in the process of encoding, decoding, please take care of this. Okay, that's pretty much coding case. It's straightforward. All you need to do is you put an enum called coding keys and string, and coding keys is what by default is used. If you want to change it, you need to manually write your encoding and decoding stuff, which we are going to discuss in a while. And this is of course from the string. Why? Because these are the key names, and it conforms to the coding key protocol. Okay, and then you can You can have one JSON structure and you can go with another model. For example, if you don't want ID, if you want to go with PID, you can do that. If you don't want name, if you want to go with another key name for this name, you can go ahead with that. So this is pretty much coding case. So that flexibility is available in the coding protocol with the help of coding case. Now let's quickly jump into this encoding and decoding manually, which is nothing but, so far we are not overriding the encoding and decoding process. We are just giving the model and JSON data getting converted. What if I want to customize? What if I want to manually write my own encoding and decoding? So here we discussed it, right? So actually whenever you are doing this decode or encoding process, actually what happens is, if I just extend it, extension product Codable. Okay, so it will start complaining product. I don't need to. Why? Because it's already there, but here I can go ahead and take it out, and here I can mention it. Now Codable, I need to implement the protocols. It's not mandatory, but see, these are the default protocols that will get let's say decodable. Why? Because here I am just doing the decoding process. Let's get with the decodable. Why? Because JSON decoder your JSON decoder actually calls this init from decoder method. Here actually it comes product decoding process. Okay, so product decoder written from initializer without initializing all stored properties. Without initializing all stored properties, it is doing. That means I need to initialize everything. So ID is equal to, let's say I'll just hard code it for now. Name is equal to LG. I'll just hard code it for now. And cost is equal to some 3.40, and info, sorry, we thought of it as description is equal to some text. Okay, so I pretty much hard coded it, correct? So this is what overriding your stuff actually. But let's see, when you actually call the decoding process, what is getting executed. Let's see here. See, it overridden. See, product decoding process, and your product is got overridden by this process. That means this happens whenever you call .decode. Decoder.decode actually calls this. Okay, even though this is your product, this got overridden by this. So that is the reason we don't do that. If you want to go ahead with what we want to, instance method decode requires, okay, product conform to the decodable protocol. So that is the reason we don't do it. We just leave it as it is, or this is also not needed. So it pretty much goes here. So that when I need to do this process manually, and when I need to encode and decode process manually, that we'll discuss it now. For example, I have an appointment JSON string. Appointment is having ID, name, date, and address. Okay, this is my appointment appointment string. So for example, here if you can see, address is having street, city, zip code. For example, here there are two cases, additional case. Two cases in the sense, for example, let me create a structure called appointment, which will have pretty much the same stuff: ID, name, date, ID, name. Date is usually the string that comes from the service response. But here, let's say I have something called address, but here I just want the zip code. I don't want this address, correct? There is a deviation. I don't want the address, I just need the zip code of the appointment, which is again a string. So in this case, what we need to do? So here comes, like, we usually need to manually implement the decoding and encoding process. Otherwise, if you directly use the decoding process, you will get the address and you will get the error actually. So pretty much, let's see what is the error that it gives. I am going to use the same piece of code. For example, this is appointment JSON string. Appointment JSON string, I want to convert into appointment data, appointment data. So this is my appointment and this is my appointment, this is my appointment. There is a change in the JSON structure, there is a change in the JSON structure and the custom model. So it says like boss no value associated with the coding keys, coding keys info. So it is still, just a second, date, zip code, product dot self. Here I need to give it as appointment dot self. Since we are decoding it, at least this needs to be conformed to the decodable protocol. Now it should throw an error. Why? Because the JSON structure and the custom model structure are different. So that's how it is complaining, boss. Zip code, no value associated with the coding keys. Zip code, I don't see in the JSON the zip code value. Correct? So for that, what we need to do, this is where we first need to write our own. Of course, only decoding I am going to explain. Pretty much encoding is also same, which also I will explain. Appointment, decodable. So here how we generally take the values. For example, values, we as I told you, by default it uses the coding keys if you give or don't give. So this is the code, like decoder dot container keyed by. That's the problem. It needs to be in an init from decoder values decoder dot container keyed by coding keys. This is the default enum that's used. Since there is a structure, that is why it is complaining, boss, where are my coding keys? Correct? Coding keys string, earlier we copy pasted. Let's try to write it now. These three are not going to be changed. Of course, these are case. It's a case, it's a case, it's a case, and we don't need to mention the data type. Okay. And yeah, this is also a case, but it's like an additional key. Correct? It's like an additional key. So this actually we separate. This is like an additional key. It's not something I don't want to change the name or something like that, like earlier we did. Correct? It's like an different key. So what we just write it as additional keys. Again, string coding key. Now it comes like this is enum actually. Here the case is this is the additional key altogether. So if there is complete different structure, instead of additional key, of course you can give anything actually. Okay, why? I'll explain it in a while. So we first coding keys values we take it, which are nothing but ID, name and date. So how we take it, like for example ID. So we have all the values from the container coding keys. So if I have to take ID, how I take the ID is try values dot decode type. ID type is int dot self for keys ID. Okay, the enum case. Now the same thing applies for name. which is name. The same thing applies for date, which is again a string, which is again date, correct. So we have got ID, name and date. Now the zip code. Zip code, of course, it's not from the coding keys container, it's from the additional keys container, so it's pretty much going to be same. So what I'm going to do is, so here I mention like additional values. These are additional values, but these are additional keys, but you can give anything you want for key. This is for key, additional keys, comma, for key. For key, the key is address, of course. Since it is a playground, automatic stuff is not happening, but usually it comes. Sorry, just a second. So this is a nested container now. Sorry about that. Why? Because it's not a container, it is inside a container there is a nested container. So that's the reason keyed by additional keys dot self, that's why it's complaining, and for key address. Okay, now zip code it's same. I have, so zip code it's same. I have values, not values, additional values dot decode. Zip code is again a string, string dot self for key. For key, what is the value? Zip code. Okay, so here let's build some warnings. It's for key, it is address. So it's not decoder now, it's values dot nested container. In the values there is a nested container, and from which I am picking up the zip code. Okay, additional keys I have given, address I have given, zip code I am trying to fetch it like this. Let's see now how the decoding happens. So it's saying like zip code is not there. Okay, just a second. Sorry, here I forgot address. Of course it's having address, but I am ignoring address. I need the zip code. Okay, that is the reason it is not able to take that address. Okay, this is the structure of coding keys. That means this is the actual structure of JSON: ID, name, date and address, but this is the extra additional information where from address I want the zip code. Why? Because my model needs the zip code. So in a way I just overridden. This is my manual. This is my manual decoding process. This is my manual decoding process. Manual decoding process. That means I customized it. That means it's in my control. Earlier it's not in my control, but whether I can take the control like this. So initially the decoder contain, we take the coding keys and take the values. Now from the values we go with the nested container. Why? Because it's the nested JSON structure from which we fetch the nested address. So if I don't think it will give error, so it's perfect. ID, name, date and zip code, not the address. So this is the use case where we will go for manual decoding process. Of course I can write a default encodable actually encodable process as well, which is nothing but starts with this one. Just a second. Encode 2. So here I can write whatever I want. Actually Okay, so it's same as like you take the container encoder dot container keyed by coding keys dot self. So it's pretty much the same. In the same way how we decoded, how the same way I encoded it. I'm not discussing about the encoding process, so just the decoding we'll discuss. The same way we can do the manual processing of encoding as well. So this is one use case of if you have a different structure, and this is what encoding and decoding manually using the additional keys. This is how we do it, and we take complete control of it. Okay, so yeah, the final part, which is we thought like in the JSON serialization, its data transformations are very difficult, but with the help of Codable protocol it's very easy. Now let's see how come it is very easy, right? So for example, let's say zip code, I want to add some prefix here. I can add. Why? Because I have this, so I can add whatever I wanted to write. Why? Because here I am assigning the values. I know where they are getting assigned, correct? So here I can convert into dot string or something, anything. For example, let's try with this. For example, our date is a string, okay, which is coming from the JSON, but I want it to be a actual date. Now how can we do it? Now I want it to be date dot cell. So this is string. So let's say date string coming from the API I have got, but date is something I need to build it. Okay, this is the conversation, let's say. So instead of doing it at later parts of the application, let's say we want to do it in the process of decoding itself, which is good actually. So that if you want to do the conversions, you go to where you are decoding and change the decoding process, which is good. Okay, now let's say, now again date string try values, since it is a try, you do try, and of course you catch. So go try. Of course, when you get the date string, again what you need to do is you need to convert it into, so for which we need a date formatter. Date formatter is equal to date formatter. So what is the format? The format that we are getting from the JSON string is YYYMMDD. Okay, let's use the same. So it is YYYYMMDD. Okay, this is the format we are using. So let's try to convert, I'm sorry, it is date format. So let's try to convert this into a date. So if let appointment not update, appointment date is equal to date formatter dot date from string. The string is date string. So if we get the date, then I assign it like boss. Date is nothing but appointment date. So if I don't, I just take the today's date. Why? Because my parsing failed. And if I get the catch also, whatever may be the error, I am not going to worry much. I'll just put it as you take the current date. So just for now. So right, this is nothing but data transformations, or we can call it as conversions, where I can do it in the decoding process itself. So this is the advantage of encodable and decodable stuff. So if you pretty much can see, you will see date, see in this format, you have a date now. You have a date now. Okay, maybe it is giving some format. I don't think it's IST. I am from IST. I don't think this is IST format. Maybe some general date format. It might be taking it and giving us in the date conversion. Okay, so this is how we can play with the coding keys when we need a different structure of JSON and the custom objects of Swift. Coding keys we give. For example, if there is a nested structure, we want to go with additional keys. No, I not in this JSON. I need an additional key. Of course, this is inside the nested structure, but I want this. So in that case I can go with the additional keys, I can override my decoding process, and the same applies to the encoding process, though we are not discussing in this tutorial. So I just did the date conversions like that. You can do, you can manipulate the name, you can add Mr. Based on the gender, you can add Mr., Mrs., something like that. Zip code you can manipulate, converting it to double instead of string. So data conversions also we can do. Pretty much this is your decoding process. If decoding is failing, this is the place you need to come and check. So if it is decodable, this is the protocol method that gets called. If it is encodable, this is the protocol method that gets called. But when you are calling this, if you are not implementing this, by default it creates one encoding keys which are equal to your JSON string and goes ahead. If not, it checks if you have a coding keys defined, it takes it. And error handling is very good. It clearly gives you, boss, there is an error in decoding or encoding process. That's how Codable protocol is very useful, handy, and it's easy to maintain using this process. And yeah, that's pretty much the beauty of Codable protocol, and which we come across in our daily programming. Why? Because calling the service, fetching the data, if there are anything is pretty much related to the service call, this decoding and encoding process is going to be very helpful. I hope this Codable protocol series is useful for you. Thank you so much.